Tal, we know that the president's tweets can sometimes translate into practice. So will the United States officially withdraw aid from Pakistan?
Yeah, not just aid. We're talking about $255 million that the United States is reportedly withholding. Back in August, the Trump administration notified Congress that it is delaying this exact payment of $255 million in military assistance to Islamabad. And Islamabad can only access this money if it did more to crack down on internal terror groups, terror networks, launching also attacks on neighboring Afghanistan. And then just last week, the New York Times reported that the president was considering to withdraw this entire amount of $255 million. And today, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, confirmed it in a press briefing.
I'm curious, Tal, because the president's tweet on Pakistan was the first tweet of the new year. Why do you think he made this issue the first thing he spoke about?
Well, it's interesting. We don't know exactly the sequence and what went there behind the scene, why exactly he chose to do it now. But we do know that we've seen several previous remarks from the president in that respect. And his attitude towards this country is nothing new. We cannot say that Nikki Haley's remarks today at the United Nations stakeout was something that came out of the blue or something that came without warning to Pakistan, because just a few weeks ago, for example, when the president unveiled the White House national security strategy, he particularly spoke there about Pakistan. Here's what he said. He said, "We have made clear to Pakistan that while we desire continued partnership, we must see decisive action against terrorist groups operating on their territory." But then in October, if you remember, after the American-Canadian family was released with help from the Pakistani government, they were held captive for over 5 years in Afghanistan by a Taliban-linked group. The Pakistani government helped the United States. They were cooperating to bring about the release of this family, and the president praised the government for this effort. He said Pakistan was starting to respect the United States again. So there's this delicate line there, very complex relationship between the U.S. and Pakistan, and this is how it plays out just once again.
And on this day, it played out with Nikki Haley, as you mentioned, at the United Nations. Let's take a listen, and here's what Nikki Haley said about Pakistan. Watch.
Pakistan has played a double game for years. They work with us at times, and they also harbor the terrorists that attack our troops in Afghanistan. That game is not acceptable to this administration. The president is willing to go to great lengths to stop all funding from Pakistan as they continue to harbor and support terrorism.
And two more things that Nikki Haley mentioned there at this press conference in regards to Pakistan is, one is that the president is willing to go even further and cut all aid to Pakistan if they continue to harbor and support terrorism, in her words. And the other thing that Haley said is that this announcement that she made during the briefing today, cutting the aid to Pakistan, has nothing to do with the Jerusalem vote. Speaking of these threats that both Haley and the president have voiced a week or a week and a half ago regarding countries that will vote against the United States at the General Assembly. So it has nothing to do with the Jerusalem vote.
Nothing to do. Although we were discussing previously that there seems to be a pattern here of the Trump administration using foreign aid to bully other governments to do what the Trump administration wants. Clearly, this looks like another example of it, right?
And certainly something that was very scripted. You looked at her, she was reading off of a scripted remark. She wasn't ad-libbing at that point. So they've clearly thought this through, at least to the extent that they are thinking it through.
Yeah, and it comes a week after we heard that the Trump administration will also cut $285 million for the next year's budget at the United Nations. It's just one more example of these financial sticks.
Tal Heinrich, I-24 News correspondent and anchor. Tal, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Still ahead, big news out of